music has been a witness to countless enigmas, disappearances, and inexplicable tragedies. Throughout the decades, legends and true stories have emerged that have fascinated the public. Today, we are going to delve into 7 cases that are simply fascinating. So, get comfortable and turn off the lights, because these are 7 unsolved mysteries of music. How is it going? Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Let's begin. The disappearance of Richey Edwards. Richey Edwards was the charismatic guitarist and lyricist for the rock band Manic Street Preachers. In the months leading up to his disappearance, he was working on the Holy Bible, a dark album for which he wrote 75% of the lyrics. At the same time, his health was fragile. He suffered from severe depression, had been struggling with anorexia for some time, and had reached a weight of less than 40 kilograms, which is extremely low for an adult man. During 1994, he was hospitalized in 2 psychiatric wards and even attempted to take his own life that summer. In short, Richey was going through a very difficult personal moment while his band was preparing for a tour in the United States. Wednesday, the 1st of February 1995, was the last day anyone saw him. That morning, he was supposed to travel from London with his bandmates to the U.S. to promote the Holy Bible. The reception at the London Embassy Hotel confirmed that Richey checked out at 7:00 a.m. and then drove off in his car. However, he never arrived at the airport. He had called his mother the night before to tell her he didn't feel like traveling. His bandmate James Dean Bradfield went to the hotel and asked to enter the 5th floor with a master key to check the room where Richey had stayed. There he found his journals, a suitcase with all his clothes, a bottle of Prozac, and a note wrapped for a friend with the inscription, "I love you." It is known that after leaving the hotel, Richey drove to Cardiff, Wales, where his apartment was. He left behind his passport, his medication, and a toll receipt from 255, dated February 1 at the Severn Bridge, which connects Wales to England. At first, it was believed the ticket corresponded to 2:55 p.m., but since the bridge operated 24 hours a day, it is likely it could have been 2:55 a.m. In the following days, there were several reports of alleged sightings. Some witnesses claimed to have seen him in the Cardiff and Newport areas in Wales. On February 7, a taxi driver picked up a passenger with Richey's physical characteristics in Newport and took him to a service station right next to the Severn Bridge. The passenger got off there and paid the taxi driver £68 in cash. On the 14th of February 1995, his car, a Vauxhall Cavalier, received a parking ticket at that same service station. 3 days later, on February 17, the police found the car abandoned near the bridge with a dead battery and signs that someone had been living in it. From that moment on, there were no more traces of Richey. British authorities treated it as a missing person case. The Cardiff police issued public statements and reviewed the route the musician took, but no further clues were found. The discovery of the car near the Severn Bridge sparked suspicion of suicide, as that bridge is a sadly common place for fatal attempts. However, his friends and family rejected this hypothesis, saying it was impossible for him to jump off the bridge. In parallel, his family and bandmates did everything possible to cooperate with the investigation. They offered rewards, distributed current photographs of Richey, and hired private investigators who, unfortunately, were unsuccessful. His colleagues in Manic Street Preachers paid tribute to him by keeping a space empty for him. For years, they left an empty microphone on stage and reserved his share of the musical royalties in case he ever returned. Finally, after years of legal proceedings and due to the lack of evidence regarding his whereabouts, a British court officially declared Richey Edwards dead in December 2008. Even so, his family and friends insist that as long as there is no body or definitive proof, the case will remain an unsolved mystery. There are many theories and speculations about what really happened to him. Most believe he took his own life by jumping off the Severn Bridge, although his body was never found. However, those close to the musician remember that he was obsessed with the idea of escaping, not ending his life, which leads us to the theory that Richey planned a voluntary disappearance. His journals and previous actions suggest planning, as in the weeks prior, he had withdrawn large sums of cash and prepared gifts for those close to him, such as a package of books he left for his ex-girlfriend. It is known that he obsessively read stories about characters who disappeared by their own choice and frequently quoted the poet Rimbaud, who wrote all his poetry between the ages of 16 and 21 before disappearing from the artistic scene. Over the years, some people have claimed to have seen him in places as remote as Goa in India, the beaches of Lanzarote in Spain, or distant cities in Eastern Europe. But none of these alleged appearances could be confirmed with evidence. And so, nearly 30 years after his disappearance, the true whereabouts of Richey Edwards remain an enigma that has yet to be solved. Gloomy Sunday. The song. Gloomy Sunday is a song of Hungarian origin, originally titled Szomorú Vasárnap, or Sad Sunday. It was composed in 1933 by the pianist Richey Edwards in Budapest. Initially, Edwards wrote different lyrics called The End of the World, about the despair of war, but it did not have the expected success. Subsequently, the poet Laszlo Java wrote new lyrics for the song, narrating the sorrow of a man who loses his lover and plans to take his own life to be reunited with her. This version was recorded for the first time in 1935 by the singer Paul Kalmar, becoming a huge success but starting the legend of a strange curse linked to this song. In 1941, singer Billie Holiday recorded an English version, which became known worldwide under the title Gloomy Sunday. Since its early years, Gloomy Sunday acquired the reputation of being a cursed song. The press of the time linked it to several cases of people who decided to end their lives while the song was playing. In 1936, Time magazine reported the case of a Hungarian shoemaker named Joseph Keller, who cited verses from this song in his suicide note. It was also said that several bodies recovered from people who had thrown themselves into the Danube River had the sheet music for the song in their hands. Other accounts spoke of a woman who drowned in Vienna, also holding the sheet music, couples who said goodbye to this world together after listening to the track, or even someone who shot themselves in a nightclub while the song was playing. These stories began to circulate in all the media, and inevitably, the song gained a dark fame while also gaining notoriety as a musical composition, and more artists added themselves to the list by recording their own versions. Various experts point out that the increase in the rate of people ending their lives in the late 1930s had more to do with geopolitical events, such as the Great Depression or the start of World War II. However, the legend had come to stay. Due to its gloomy reputation, the song was censored in various places. The BBC in London, for example, explicitly banned it from 1941 until the year 2002. Instrumental versions were allowed, but not vocal performances. The official reason was that during World War II, records that could affect the morale of listeners were banned, although many suspected it was because they wanted to prevent the song from ending the lives of more people. In Hungary, it was also banned, and in the United States, some radio stations and nightclubs removed it from their programming due to superstition. A little-known fact about this story is that there is a version in Spanish called Triste Domingo, recorded by Agustin Magaldi in the mid-1930s. Other notable performers include Elvis Costello and Björk, among many others. A disturbing detail is that Richey Edwards, the author of the song, ended up taking his own life in 1968, which only served to reaffirm the dark fame of this famous musical piece. Many believe it is just coincidences or exaggerations by the press of the time. Others believe the phenomenon is due to how deeply dark and melancholic the original lyrics are. And some even think that there is indeed something evil and even paranormal behind this famous song. The Pact of Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson was an American blues guitarist and singer. He had a short career, as he died young, but with only 29 songs recorded between 1936 and 1937, he managed to reach the status of a legend, influencing generations of musicians for many, many years. But his legacy also comes accompanied by a rumor, one that ended up becoming a quite dark legend. Johnson grew up in harsh conditions. His mother, of African American descent, worked in the fields, and his father was an itinerant laborer whom Robert never knew. When he was 2 years old, his mother was forced to flee Hazelhurst due to problems with racist landowners and moved to Arkansas. Shortly after, she sent him to Memphis to live with his stepfather, Charles Dodds. In Memphis, he attended school briefly, but dropped out around the age of 13 or 14, citing vision problems and a lack of interest. By then, Robert showed a great affinity for music, as he first learned to play the harmonica and later the guitar. He soon became famous in the local black community as a young promise of the blues and even accompanied veteran Delta figures like Charlie Patton, Willie Brown, and Son House on stage. In 1929, at age 18, he married 16-year-old Virginia Travis. Less than a year later, Virginia became pregnant, and in April 1930, she died in childbirth. along with their baby. Devastated by this tragedy, Johnson took refuge in alcohol and threw himself entirely into music. In the following years, he performed as an itinerant musician throughout the deep south of the United States in fairs and taverns, until he finally had the opportunity to begin recording his songs. And so, in just 2 sessions, one in San Antonio in 1936 and another in Dallas in 1937, he recorded his legendary 29 songs, a small repertoire but considered fundamental to later blues. Johnson developed a unique style within rural blues, using his thumb to keep the rhythm underneath while the other fingers wove complex melodies. Furthermore, he is considered one of the great masters of slide, the technique of sliding a metal tube over the strings, a sound that is characteristic of Delta blues today. His deep voice and personal lyrics also made him stand out in the genre. If you don't know his story, you are probably wondering where the macabre side is in all this. Well, Robert Johnson could just be a talented musician who died young, but the reality is that there is much more behind this legacy. The legend says that he achieved his virtuosity after selling his soul to the very devil. It is said that at the beginning of his career, Johnson was not a very good singer or a very good guitarist. In fact, on the contrary, it is said that his skills did not stand out in the slightest, at least until he disappeared for a year and a half, around 1931, from the blues scene. When he reappeared, he was an extraordinary guitarist, which several considered to be something supernatural. It was rumored that at a crossroads at midnight, he had made a pact with the devil in order to obtain that enormous talent. This story was contributed to by the famous phrase attributed to the musician's son House, who in an interview said that Johnson must have sold his soul to the devil to be able to play like that. This legend is also usually associated with another blues musician named Tommy Johnson, who said he learned to play guitar thanks to a stranger tuning his instrument one night at a crossroads. All these elements, added to the young man's enigmatic personality, fueled the legend of his supposed infernal pact, but nothing made the rumors grow more than his own songs, as compositions like Me and the Devil Blues, where he addresses the devil directly in his lyrics with phrases like, "Hello, Satan, I believe it's time to go," or "Hellhound on my trail," where he speaks of hellhounds stalking him at night, and the famous track Crossroad Blues, where he narrates his anguish trying to hitchhike at a crossroads during sunset. All these are cited as evidence of this supposed infernal pact, and as if that weren't enough, to add even more to the mystery, Johnson died prematurely in circumstances that are, to say the least, confusing. The most accepted version is that on the 16th of August 1938, he was poisoned with mothballs in a bottle of whiskey by the jealous husband of a woman with whom he was having an affair. However, the lack of clear evidence left other hypotheses open, as his official death certificate mentions syphilis as the cause of death, while some propose things like pneumonia or even a gunshot as a possible origin of death. What is certain is that he died at just 27 years old, becoming the founding member of the tragic 27 Club. Eric Clapton said of him that he was the most important blues musician who ever lived and dedicated an entire album to him, Me and Mr. Johnson, reviewing his entire body of work. British and American bands covered his songs or borrowed his licks. Led Zeppelin included verses from Me and the Devil Blues in their song Lemon Song. The Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, and many others also recorded reinterpretations of these pieces. Rolling Stone magazine ranked him 5th among the greatest guitarists of all time, and he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1986. Despite his brief career, Johnson's musical legacy is immense, and although perhaps it will never be known how much is truth and how much is myth in this story, this tale of the devil at a crossroads will continue to fascinate the entire world for many years to come. Hello. If you are enjoying this type of content, we remind you that you can now listen to Catastrophico, our new exclusive podcast on Podimo. There we talk about the most shocking tragedies in human history like never before, and we do it completely uncensored. We release a new episode every Monday, and you can easily join from the link in the description, in the pinned comment, and on all our social networks. Thank you very much, and keep enjoying this episode. The Mystery of Connie Converse. Elizabeth Eaton Converse, better known as Connie Converse, was an American folk singer-songwriter. She was born in Laconia, New Hampshire, in 1924, and stood out as a student during her youth. In the 1950s, she lived in New York, where she began to compose intimate songs with quite melancholic lyrics. Despite recording some demos and appearing briefly on television in 1954, she never landed a major record deal. By 1961, quite frustrated by her lack of musical success, she decided to move to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to work with her brother at the University of Michigan, and left her artistic career almost entirely. During this stage, she abandoned recordings and songwriting. In August 1974, shortly after turning 50, Connie wrote several letters to her family and friends. In them, she spoke of her feeling of isolation, of not having a place where she fit in. In one of the letters addressed to her brother Philip, she included a check and asked him to keep her health insurance for a while, but she also set a date on which he should stop paying it. After sending these strange letters, Connie gathered her belongings, her guitar, her clothes, personal documents, everything she considered essential, packed everything into her car, a Volkswagen Beetle, and left from her home in Ann Arbor, Michigan, toward an unknown destination. Her family expected her to arrive at a family trip they usually took to a lake. But this did not happen, and from that moment on, nothing more was heard of her. After a while, some weak data emerged. Someone told Connie's brother that they saw a listing with the name Elizabeth Converse in a phone book in Kansas or Oklahoma, which could suggest that perhaps she was using another name, but that lead never led anywhere. About 10 years after her disappearance, the family decided to hire a private investigator. But the investigator warned them that if he located Connie, he could not force her to return nor necessarily reveal her location if she did not wish it so. At that moment, her relatives understood that perhaps she wanted to remain disappeared, so they stopped looking for her. Decades after her disappearance, Connie Converse's work was rediscovered and valued. In 2004, a radio program broadcast unreleased recordings of hers, which led to the compilation of her music, and in March 2009, the album How Sad, How Lovely was published, featuring 17 songs recorded by Converse in the 1950s. Her clear voice and poetic lyrics captivated a segment of the public, and today she is considered a fundamental cult figure among independent musicians, being admired for her lyrical sensitivity. Many believe that perhaps she took her own life. Others that she simply escaped far from everything she had known. But the only thing certain is that time gave her a place in music, a place that was denied to her in her time. Her fate remains unclear, and although it is probable that she is no longer alive, many maintain the hope that at least she reached the point of knowing that, in the end, her music was indeed valued. The 27 Club. In the case of Robert Johnson, we commented that he had been the founder of the 27 Club, and this is quite an interesting story to tell. This legend was born from a chilling coincidence, as several world-famous musicians have died precisely at the age of 27. The first emblematic case was precisely that of Robert Johnson, but over time, similar tragedies began to repeat themselves. At the height of the rock and roll wave, between 1969 and 1971, 4 stars died at age 27 inches almost consecutive fashion. In July 1969, Brian Jones, founder of the Rolling Stones, passed away. He was found lifeless floating in his swimming pool, as he had drowned. Barely a year later, in September 1970, Jimi Hendrix died accidentally from an overdose of sleeping pills and alcohol. And a few weeks later, Janis Joplin also succumbed to a heroin overdose. Finally, in July 1971, the charismatic leader of The Doors, Jim Morrison, was found dead in the bathtub of his apartment in Paris. The death of the Lizard King, in fact, is an entire music mystery in itself. But all these consecutive tragedies were what ended up cementing the idea that 27 years old was a cursed age in the rock industry. The term 27 Club did not finish taking hold until late 1994, after the death of Kurt Cobain, the iconic leader of Nirvana. The media coined the concept when they spoke of a supposed curse that haunted artists who live fast and die at that age. At that time, Cobain's mother even told the local press that her son had joined that stupid club when he passed away. The complete list is actually uncertain, as every country has its own stories about local stars who joined this macabre club. The tragic death of the British singer Amy Winehouse in 2011 was what revived interest in this phenomenon and popularized the term again. For many, the 27 Club is a warning about the dangers of early fame and also about excesses. But for others, it goes further. And there are not a few who claim that it is a completely real curse, one that sooner or later will end up claiming the lives of more people. The disappearance of Jim Sullivan. Jim Sullivan was an American singer and songwriter born in 1939, who was active mainly in the 60s and early 70s. He published only 2 albums before disappearing in 1975 without a trace. Jim was the son of Irish immigrants. He grew up in California and began his musical career playing in clubs in Los Angeles. He had folk, rock, and country influences, and even appeared as an extra in the movie Easy Rider in 1969. That same year, he recorded his first album titled U.F.O., with songs that mixed acoustic sounds with enigmatic lyrics, although at the moment of its release, it had very little success. In 1972, he released a second album under the Playboy Records label, but it also did not have commercial success. The lack of professional recognition, along with personal problems such as his separation from his wife, frustrated him and made him fall into excessive alcohol consumption. It was in March 1975 that he decided to undertake a trip to Nashville, Tennessee, where his sister-in-law Katie worked, with the hope of relaunching his musical career. But that trip would not have the expected destination. Sullivan left Los Angeles on the 4th of March 1975, bound for Nashville, driving his Volkswagen Beetle. The next day, in New Mexico, an officer stopped him upon noticing that his car was swerving. After verifying that he was not driving drunk, but exhausted, the police officer advised him to rest. Sullivan obeyed and checked into the La Mesa Motel in Santa Rosa, New Mexico. He bought a bottle of vodka at the city store and spent the night there, although some reports indicate that he didn't actually sleep in the room and left the key in the door. The dawn of March 6 was the last time he was seen driving south, about 68 kilometers from Santa Rosa, in the vicinity of the Galisteo Ranch. Later that day, his Volkswagen was found abandoned on the side of the road near the ranch. Inside the car was his money, documents, clothes, his prized guitar, and a box of his unsold record copies. There were no signs of a struggle nor any serious accident, which increased the bewilderment about what had happened. Faced with the disappearance, his family alerted the police immediately. Search teams from local authorities along with federal agents scoured the desert area of New Mexico, but found no clue whatsoever. No one ever saw the musician again. Sometime later, a corpse was found in an advanced state of decomposition several kilometers from the place, but the coroners confirmed that it was not Jim. The family fought to get answers, but it was simply futile. The absence of clear evidence allowed for many speculations. Among the most common explanations, the possibility of an accident is considered. Perhaps Sullivan suffered a mechanical failure, walked alone, got lost in the desert, and died without being found. The possibility of suicide has also been suggested, considering the personal pressure he was experiencing at that moment. There is also the theory of murder. Some theorize that perhaps he could have run into dangerous criminals or seen something he shouldn't have seen. The Galisteo Ranch, which was nearby, was linked to supposed members of the Chicago Mafia, which fueled this hypothesis that perhaps Jim had been the victim of a crime. Another theory is that Sullivan perhaps wanted to disappear voluntarily to start from zero, although this is the least popular. The most striking version, without a doubt, is that of alien abduction. And thanks to the mysterious title of his album U.F.O., as well as his lyrics, many believe that perhaps beings from other worlds could have abducted him. Some of his songs spoke of lonely roads, saying goodbye to his loved ones, and even encounters with UFOs. Several songs allude directly to traveling along endless roads and the experience of being abducted by extraterrestrials. With time, those cryptic verses were interpreted as prophetic. Given the title of the disc and his references to abduction, many people began to see it as a clue to his true fate. With the passage of years, his records became cult pieces among folk rock collectors and have been re-released with great success. So, although Jim Sullivan's disappearance remains unsolved, his music has continued to knock on doors and reach new generations, ensuring that his name at least is not forgotten. The death of Juan Gabriel. Juan Gabriel is one of those artists who do not need an introduction. He was one of the greatest stars of Mexican music, and many believe that he has even been the greatest. Officially, he passed away on the 28th of August 2016, at age 66 inches, Santa Monica, California, due to a sudden heart attack. His body was cremated the following day by decision of his children, and this official version was disseminated by the media at the time. But since then, rumors and questions have begun to surface that fuel the mystery about what really happened to him, and since his passing was announced, several theories began to circulate on social networks. and in traditional media that Juan Gabriel was actually alive. His former manager, Joaquin Munoz, insisted for years that he had spoken with the singer after 2016 and that Juan Gabriel planned to return to the stage, fueling the idea that the Divo de Juarez had faked his death, although he gave several television interviews and spoke to various media outlets ensuring this, and even giving dates for the supposed return. In the end, everything came to nothing, and the low credibility of Joaquin Munoz went down the drain, with people gradually forgetting the whole matter. On the other hand, journalists like Martha Figueroa even pointed out that the handling of his remains had been quite strange. For example, his inheritance was never distributed, and despite the fact that in the United States it usually takes up to 15 days to repatriate a body, the singer-songwriter's remains arrived at the Palace of Fine Arts in Mexico City barely 3 days later. This made many think that there was something strange about these official procedures. For example, the actress Lucía Méndez told a Netflix program that Juan Gabriel called her suddenly saying, "Hello, my daughter," and then hung up. The Mexican comedian J.J. Mendoza claimed that one of his children heard the singer himself in a phone conversation. The eldest of my 2 children was seeing Juan Gabriel's niece, and they asked for them to take them to the ranch in Cancun for New Year's. So, my children heard him talking to this girl's mother, declared the comedian. With the arrival of the rise of artificial intelligence, new videos began to surface where the Divo de Juarez could supposedly be seen speaking to the camera, although they were quickly dismissed as simple internet hoaxes. Although many statements may come from mere speculation of wanting to attract the attention of the media or simply to make some money at the expense of the singer's legacy, the truth is that there are some quite curious and strange things surrounding his death. More recently, some users on the internet noticed that Juan Gabriel's unique population registry code, or CURP, is still active in the Mexican government's records. And although this could have administrative explanations, for some fans, this is one more sign that the singer could effectively still be alive. The most recent development on this topic occurred just a few days ago, as of the time we are recording this video, when at the end of September 2025, a video recorded in Paris, France, was spread. In this video, captured by Mexican tourists, an older man very similar to Juan Gabriel appears. The footage shows the subject in a blue shirt sitting on a terrace. His appearance generated a massive debate on social networks, reviving conspiracy theories regarding his end. Officially, Juan Gabriel ceased to exist in the year 2016, but whether due to his enormous legacy or the love of his audience, many insist on believing that he is still alive. Or perhaps we are really facing a case that, if confirmed, would undoubtedly shake the history of music and pop culture forever. Thank you very much for subscribing, leaving your like, and following us on social media. We hope you enjoyed these mysteries. With nothing more to say, I bid you farewell. See you next time.